The stars looked different when you knew aliens were watching them too. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U.E.'s horizon and felt the weight of representing all humanity on his shoulders. 3 years had passed since the first alien ship appeared near Mars, and now humanity was about to sign their first treaty with the Galactic Confederation. The alien space station was huge, beyond anything humans had ever built. It stretched across space like a metal city, with ships from dozens of different worlds docking at its many ports. Morrison had seen pictures before, but being here in person made him feel very small. The Horizon was Earth's most advanced ship, but it looked like a toy next to the massive alien vessels moving around them. "Admiral, we are getting a message from the station," said Communications Officer Lisa Park. She was young, but had learned alien languages faster than anyone else in. "The fleet. The Confederation Council is ready to meet with us." Morrison nodded and straightened his uniform. Behind him stood the rest of the human team. Dr. Kevin Barnes was their language expert and lawyer. He had spent months learning about alien laws and customs. Commander Amy Rodriguez was their military advisor, a sharp woman who never missed important details. The rest of the crew were scientists and diplomats, all picked because they were the best Earth had to offer. "Remember, this treaty will decide humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come," Morrison told his team. "We need to be careful and smart about everything we agree to." The docking process took an hour. When they finally entered the station, Morrison was amazed by what he saw. The corridors were filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others floated in the air, or moved on many legs. The walls were covered with writing in languages that hurt to look at, and the air smelled like flowers mixed with metal. Their guide was a Zephyrian named Ambassador Kel-9. He was tall and blue with 4 arms and eyes that glowed softly in the dim light. The Zephyrians had been the first to contact Earth, and they seemed to like humans more than some of the other alien races did. "Welcome to Harmony Station," Kel-9 said in perfect English. "We are very happy that humanity has chosen to join our peaceful community of worlds." The meeting room was enormous, with a table that could seat representatives from 50 different worlds. Most of the seats were empty today, but Morrison could see delegates from a dozen alien species watching them with interest. Some looked friendly, others seemed bored, and a few appeared to be studying the humans like they were. Interesting insects. The treaty itself was displayed on a floating screen above the table. It was written in the common galactic language, but the humans had been given a translated copy to study. Morrison had read it many times, and it seemed fair enough. Earth would get 50 star systems to call their own, protection from hostile aliens, and access to advanced technology. In return, humanity would follow galactic law and help defend other peaceful worlds if needed. "This is the same treaty that every new species signs," explained Counselor Vexthee, a being made of living crystal that changed colors when it spoke. "It has kept peace in the galaxy for 3,000 years. Dr. Barnes raised his hand politely. "We would like some time to review the original language version, just to make sure we understand everything perfectly." Some of the aliens seemed annoyed by this request. "The translation is exact," said one delegate with too many teeth. "Every species has signed without delay." "We appreciate that," Morrison said smoothly, "but humans have learned to be very careful about contracts. We want to make sure we can keep our promises." Kel-9 nodded with what might have been approval. "This is wise. You have 3 days to study the document before the signing ceremony." The humans spent the next 3 days in their assigned quarters. On the station, Dr. Barnes worked almost without sleep, comparing the translated treaty with the original alien text. He used every tool the humans had brought, including advanced computers and translation programs. "Is there anything unusual about it?" Morrison asked on the second day. Barnes looked tired but excited. Actually, yes. The alien language is much more precise than our translation shows. Some words have multiple meanings that change depending on context. Is that a problem? Maybe not a problem. Maybe an opportunity. Morrison did not understand what Barnes meant, but he trusted the doctors. Judgment. Barnes had found important details that others missed before, and his careful work had saved human lives during the first contact negotiations. On the third day, the signing ceremony was held in the station's main assembly hall. Representatives from 47 different worlds attended to welcome humanity into the galactic community. Morrison signed his name on the treaty with a pen made from Earth metals, while cameras from across the galaxy recorded the historic moment. "Welcome to the Confederation," Cal-9 said as applause filled the hall. "May this be the beginning of a long and peaceful partnership." Morrison shook hands with aliens using appendages that ranged from claws to tentacles to things that glowed. Everyone seemed happy and friendly. The treaty was signed, and humanity now had its place among the stars. What none of the aliens knew was that Dr. Barnes had spent those 3 days discovering something very interesting about the treaty's exact wording. Something that might change everything about humanity's future in the galaxy. But that discovery would have to wait until they returned to human space and could study the implications without alien eyes watching their every move. Dr. Kevin Barnes had not slept for 2 days straight. His quarters on the UES horizon were a mess of papers, computer screens, and coffee cups. The ship was heading back to Earth, but Barnes was not thinking about home. He was thinking about words and what they really meant. The treaty was spread out in front of him in 6 different versions. There was the English translation that the humans had signed, the common galactic language version that most aliens used, and the original Confederation standard text that very few species bothered to read. Barnes had also created his own word-by-word translation using every linguistic tool humanity possessed. "Computer, show me Article 7, Section 3 again," he said to the ship's artificial intelligence. The holographic display lit up with flowing alien script that looked like art more than writing. Each symbol seemed to dance and shift slightly, and Barnes knew that even tiny changes in the curves could completely alter the meaning. His door chimed softly. "Come in," Barnes called without looking up. Commander Amy Rodriguez entered carrying a steaming mug of coffee and a plate of food. "You need to eat something, Kevin, and sleep would not hurt either." Barnes accepted the coffee gratefully, but ignored the food. "Amy, I think I found something important. Maybe very important." Rodriguez sat down across from him and looked at the displays. As the ship's military advisor, she had learned to read tactical situations quickly, but alien languages were beyond her expertise. What kind of important? The kind that could change everything about humanity's place in the galaxy. Barnes pointed to a specific line in the treaty. "Look at this phrase here. In every translation the Confederation gave us, it says we are limited to 50 star systems for territorial expansion." Right, that seemed fair enough. 50 systems could support billions of people. But here is the thing, Barnes said, his excitement growing. The word they translated as systems is not exactly the same as our word systems. In Confederation Standard, the word is Kethmar, and it has multiple meanings. Rodriguez leaned forward. Such as? It can mean star systems. Yes, but it can also mean administrative regions, governmental districts, or territorial jurisdictions. The exact meaning depends on how the species using the word organizes their space. I do not understand. What is the difference? Barnes pulled up a new display showing human territorial organization. Every other species in the galaxy organizes their territory the same way. They think in terms of individual star systems. One star, one system, one administrative unit. But humans have always thought bigger. He showed her historical examples from Earth. Look at how we organized our planet. We did not think in terms of individual cities. We created states, provinces, regions, countries. Large areas that contained many smaller units, but were administered as single entities. Rodriguez was starting to understand. So when the treaty says 50 Kethmar, they assume it means 50 individual star systems, because that is how they think. But if humans organize differently, exactly. If we define our administrative units as regions containing multiple star systems, then 50 Kethmar could mean 50 regions, each containing dozens of systems. Would that be legal? Barnes pulled up another section of the treaty. Article 12 specifically guarantees that each species has the right to organize their internal territorial administration according to their own cultural and governmental traditions. The Confederation cannot tell us how to structure our space. Rodriguez stared at the documents for a long moment. How many star systems could we potentially claim? That depends on how we define our administrative regions. If we are smart about it, we could potentially control thousands of systems while staying completely within the letter of the treaty. Kevin, this sounds like we would be cheating. No, Barnes said firmly. This is exactly what the treaty allows. The Confederation wrote these rules, assuming every species would think the same way they do. They never considered that humans might organize space differently. Rodriguez stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars streaming past as the horizon traveled through hyperspace. What else did you find? Barnes grinned. Oh, Amy, that is just the beginning. Look at Article 23 about defensive installations. He pulled up the relevant section. The treaty says member species may establish defensive installations appropriate to the security needs of their territory. Most species build fixed space stations around their important worlds. And humans would do something different? Humans might decide that fixed defenses are not appropriate for our security needs. If our territory covers thousands of star systems spread across a large area of space, we might need mobile defense. Platforms that can move to wherever they are needed most. Rodriguez turned back to face him. Mobile defense platforms sound a lot like warships. Not warships, defense platforms. The treaty is very specific about that. But there is nothing in the treaty that says defense platforms have to stay in one place. And there is nothing that limits their size or capabilities as long as they are used only for defense. This is incredible. Have you found anything else? Barnes laughed. Amy, I have been studying this treaty for 2 days, and I keep finding new opportunities. The Confederation has been using the same legal language for 3,000 years. They never updated it because they never needed to. Every species that joined thought exactly like they did. Until now. Until now, humans look at problems differently. We ask questions that other species do not think to ask. We find solutions that other species do not think to look for. Rodriguez sat back down and picked up one of the treaty sections. What do we do with this information? First, we need to be very careful. If we move too fast or too aggressively, the Confederation might try to change the treaty or claim we are violating its spirit. We need to present our interpretations as reasonable requests for clarification. And second, we need to start planning how humanity will really organize its territory. If we are going to claim administrative regions instead of individual systems, we need to have a good reason for why we are doing it that way. Barnes pulled up a new display showing potential human territorial organization. We can argue that humans have always been explorers and traders. Our territory needs to be organized to support long-distance travel and commerce between many different worlds. Administrative regions make more sense for us than individual system management. Rodriguez studied the display. This could work. But the Confederation is not going to be happy when they realize what we have done. The Confederation wrote the treaty. If they did not want species to find creative interpretations, they should have been more careful with their language. The ship's intercom crackled to life. "Dr. Barnes, Commander Rodriguez, please report to the bridge. Admiral Morrison wants to see you immediately." As they headed for the door, Rodriguez asked, "Are you going to tell the Admiral about all of this?" Barnes gathered up his most important documents. "I am going to tell him that humanity just became much more powerful than anyone expected. And the best part is, we are going to do it completely legally." They walked through the ship's corridors toward the bridge, carrying information that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The treaty had seemed clear when the aliens explained it, but humans had a talent for reading between the lines and finding opportunities where others saw only limitations. 3 weeks after humanity submitted their territorial organization proposal to the Galactic Confederation, every alien government in the galaxy was in chaos. The document that had arrived at Confederation headquarters was unlike anything they had ever seen before. It was 847 pages long, written in perfect legal language, and completely within the bounds of the treaty they had all signed. Ambassador Kel-9 of the Zephyrians sat in his office staring at holographic displays that showed the new human territorial claims. His forearms moved nervously as he tried to understand what the humans had done. Across from him, High Counselor Vex Thee of the Crystalline Netherians was pulsing colors that indicated extreme stress. "Explain this to me again," Vex Thee said, his voice carrying the sound of breaking glass. "What exactly have the humans accomplished?" Kel-9 activated the display showing human space. "They have created something they call administrative sectors. Each sector contains multiple star systems, but they claim that one sector counts as one Kethmar under our treaty. How many systems are in each sector? That is the problem. The number varies depending on what they call the strategic and economic needs of each region." Kel-9 pointed to different areas of the display. The Terra sector, centered around their home world, contains 47 star systems. The Centauri sector has 32 systems. The Vega sector contains 61 systems. Vex Teach's crystalline body shifted through several angry colors. "This is impossible. The treaty clearly limits them to 50 systems total. The treaty limits them to 50 Kethmar. And according to their cultural documentation, humans have always organized their territories into larger administrative units called sectors, regions, states, and provinces. They argue that forcing them to organize by individual star systems would violate their cultural rights under Article 12. How many star systems do they control in total?" Kel-9's arms drooped with defeat. 2,347 systems. The silence in the room was broken only by the sound of Vex Th's crystalline form grinding against itself in frustration. Finally, the Netherian leader spoke again. "There must be something illegal about this. Some violation we can point to. I have had our best legal experts studying their proposal for days. Everything they have done is technically correct according to the treaty language. They even provided historical examples of how humans organize territory on their home planet to prove that this is their traditional method. What about their military installations? Surely there are violations there." Kel-9 activated another display, this one showing human military deployments. That is actually worse news. They have submitted a formal request for clarification about Article 23 regarding defensive installations. What kind of clarification? They want to know if the treaty's language about defensive installations appropriate to security needs includes what they call mobile defense platforms. Vex Thee stopped changing colors entirely. Mobile defense platforms? According to their technical specifications, they are designing massive space stations equipped with advanced weapons and faster-than-light travel capabilities. They argue that since their territory now spans such a large area of space, static Defenses would be inadequate for protecting their citizens and trade routes. They want to build mobile battle stations, each one larger than our heaviest dreadnought ships, yes. But they insist the platforms are purely defensive because they cannot operate outside human territorial boundaries. Vexthi began pulsing a violent red color. This is exactly what the treaty was designed to prevent. New species were supposed to remain small and manageable while they learn to be civilized members of the galactic community. The humans argue that they are being perfectly civilized. They have followed every rule, filed all proper paperwork, and even provided detailed explanations for their decisions. Their legal arguments are actually quite impressive. Get me a meeting with the human delegation immediately. We need to resolve this before other species start getting similar ideas. 2 days later, the emergency session of the Confederation. Council was packed with representatives from every major government in the galaxy. Admiral Morrison led the human delegation, flanked by Dr. Barnes and Commander Rodriguez. The humans looked calm and confident, which only made the alien representatives more nervous. High Counselor Vexthi dominated the center of the chamber, his crystalline form radiating anger in deep red pulses. The human delegation will explain their interpretation of the Territorial Limitations Treaty. Morrison stood slowly and activated a holographic display showing human territorial organization. Honorable counselors, humanity has fully complied with the treaty as written and signed. We have limited our expansion to exactly 50 administrative regions, as specified in Article 7. Those regions contain over 2,000 star systems. Cal-9 protested, his forearms waving frantically. Yes, because that is how humans naturally organize large territories. We do not think in terms of individual star systems, any more than the Cretan Collective thinks in terms of individual worlds, or the Vorthic Empire thinks in terms of individual ships. Morrison's voice remained perfectly calm and reasonable. The treaty explicitly protects our right to maintain our cultural and governmental traditions. A deep, rumbling voice echoed through the chamber from Elder Kree Vash of the Ancient Collective. The humans raise a valid point. The treaty cannot simultaneously guarantee cultural autonomy while dictating specific organizational structures. Dr. Barnes stood to address the Council's concerns about human military capabilities. If I may address the questions about our mobile defense platforms? Without waiting for permission, he activated his own holographic display. These installations are purely defensive in nature. They cannot operate outside our territorial boundaries, and their weapon systems are designed exclusively for protecting our trade routes and civilian populations from hostile forces. They are larger than our capital ships. Protested the Netherian representative. Commander Rodriguez stepped forward. Because our territory is larger than yours, Counselor. A single static defense station cannot effectively protect 60 star systems spread across hundreds of light years. Mobility allows us to respond to threats efficiently while maintaining minimal military presence in any given area. This is not the spirit of the original treaty, Vexthi declared. Morrison smiled politely. With respect, Counselor, the treaty is a legal document, not a philosophical statement. We have followed its exact language and requirements. If the Confederation intended different limitations, perhaps the language should have been more precise. The chamber erupted in arguments, as representatives from dozens of species began shouting in their native languages. Some aliens seemed impressed by human legal reasoning. Others appeared angry about the precedent being set, and a few looked worried about what this might mean for the existing balance of power in the chaos. Dr. Barnes leaned over to whisper something in Morrison's ear. The Admiral's smile grew wider as he listened to whatever the doctor had discovered. When the noise finally died down, Morrison stood again. If there are no further questions about our territorial organization, we would be happy to discuss our proposals for improving galactic trade efficiency and strengthening mutual defense agreements between peaceful species. The silence that followed was deafening. Every alien in the chamber suddenly realized that the humans were not finished surprising them. The emergency session of the Confederation Council had been called for 3 the morning station time, ensuring that everyone involved would be tired and irritable. Admiral Morrison did not mind the inconvenience. He had learned during his military career that important battles were often won when the enemy was not thinking clearly. The massive council chamber was packed with representatives from 47 different species, all of them focused on the human delegation with varying degrees of hostility and curiosity. Morrison sat calmly at the human table, flanked by Dr. Barnes and the newly promoted Captain Rodriguez. Behind them sat a team of human lawyers, economists, and military advisors who had spent months preparing for this moment. High Counselor Vex These. Crystalline form dominated the center of the chamber, pulsing angry orange colors that hurt to look at directly. The past 6 months had not been kind to the Confederation leadership. Humanity's creative interpretation of the territorial treaty had been upheld by the Galactic Court of Arbitration, and now 3 other species had submitted similar requests for clarification of their own agreements. The human proposal before us today, Vexthea announced, his voice carrying the sound of grinding stone, concerns Article 45 of the Mutual Defense Treaty. The humans claim there are gaps in our defensive coverage that need to be addressed. Captain. Rodriguez stood and activated her presentation. The holographic display showed a detailed map of galactic political boundaries, with different colors indicating the military strength of various regions. Large areas of space were highlighted in red, indicating insufficient defensive capabilities. Honorable Counselors, the Confederation Treaty guarantees mutual protection and defense for all member species. However, our analysis has identified serious gaps in the current defensive structure. Several smaller species lack the military capacity to fulfill their obligations under the mutual defense clauses. Elder Kree Vash, the ancient representative of the collective, leaned forward with interest. His species was one of the oldest in the galaxy, and they had seen many political changes over the millennia. What specific solution do the humans propose? A subsidiary defense agreement, Rodriguez explained, highlighting several smaller species on the map. Species that cannot adequately defend themselves or contribute meaningfully to mutual defense would transfer their military obligations to humanity in exchange for protection. We would essentially lease their defensive responsibilities while maintaining complete respect for their territorial sovereignty. The chamber erupted in immediate protests. Ambassador Kel-9's forearms trembled with agitation. The humans want to create a military protectorate. This is exactly the kind of aggressive expansion the treaty was designed to prevent. Morrison stood slowly, his calm demeanor a sharp contrast to the chaos around him. Ambassador Kel-9, we are not proposing expansion or conquest. We are proposing a solution to help smaller species meet their treaty obligations while strengthening overall galactic security. This arrangement benefits everyone involved. Dr. Barnes activated another display showing legal precedents. This proposal is fully supported by existing treaty language. Article 67 explicitly allows for collaborative defense arrangements between willing parties, and Article 89 permits resource-sharing agreements for mutual benefit. We are simply combining these existing provisions in a way that addresses current security gaps. You are accumulating allies and building a power base, accused Commander Vex Cole of the aggressive Vorthic Empire. The cybernetic warrior's mechanical voice carried clear hostility. Your territorial expansion was just the beginning. Now you want military control over weaker species. We are building partnerships, Morrison replied evenly. The same kind of cooperative relationships that the Confederation supposedly encourages among its members. The difference is that our partnerships actually provide tangible benefits to all parties involved. The debate continued for hours, representatives from smaller species spoke in favor of the human proposal, explaining how their current military limitations left them vulnerable to pirates, raiders, and aggressive neighbors. The larger, more established species argued that allowing humans to accumulate military allies would destabilize the existing balance of power. Finally, Elder Krevash called for order. This debate has continued long enough. The human proposal is legally sound and addresses legitimate security concerns. I call for a vote. The voting process was tense and closely monitored. Each species cast their vote electronically, with the results displayed in real time on the chamber's main screen. The smaller species voted overwhelmingly in favor of the human proposal, while the larger powers were split. In the end, the margin was closer than anyone had expected. 26 votes in favor, 21 opposed. The Human Defense Alliance proposal is approved, Vex the announced, his crystalline form now pulsing a sickly green color dot as the session officially ended. Representatives began clustering in small groups to discuss the implications of what had just happened. The humans had successfully gained legal authority to provide military protection for nearly a third of the galaxy's member species. More importantly, they had demonstrated that the existing treaty structure could be reshaped. By creative legal interpretation, Morrison was gathering his documents when Vexthi approached the human delegation. The Netherian leader's crystalline form had stabilized into a neutral blue color, indicating careful thought rather than emotional reaction. Admiral Morrison, I must ask you directly. What is humanity's ultimate goal in all of this? What do you really want from the galaxy? Morrison considered the question carefully. He had expected this conversation eventually, and he had prepared his answer. We want the same thing every intelligent species wants, Counselor. Peace, prosperity, and the right to exist on our own terms without interference from others. And if the Confederation attempts to revise the existing treaties to prevent future creative interpretations? Dr. Barnes smiled and stepped forward. Then we will read those new treaties very carefully as well, Counselor. Humans have a talent for understanding the full implications of legal documents. Vexthi studied the human delegation for a long moment. You realize that your actions are forcing fundamental changes in how galactic politics operate. The system that has maintained peace for 3,000 years is being transformed. The system was already changing, Morrison replied. New species are joining the galaxy every generation, and they bring new ideas and new ways of thinking. Humanity is just the first to approach these ancient treaties with fresh perspective. Other species are watching what you do. They are learning from your methods. Captain Rodriguez nodded. Good. The more species that understand their rights and opportunities under galactic law, the better. A galaxy where everyone understands the rules is a galaxy where everyone can prosper. As the humans left the council chamber, they passed groups of alien representatives engaged in intense discussions. Several smaller species approached Morrison to express interest in joining the Human Defense Alliance. A few larger powers watched the humans with obvious concern, clearly calculating how this development would affect their own political positions. Dr. Barnes walked beside Morrison as they headed back to their diplomatic quarters. Sir, while we were preparing for this session, I discovered something interesting in Article 103 of the Confederation Charter. What kind of interesting? The kind that might give us even more options for the future. Article 103 deals with succession protocols and the formation of new political entities. Morrison stopped walking and looked at Barnes with surprise. Are you suggesting what I think you are suggesting? I am suggesting that humans are very good at reading legal documents and finding opportunities that others miss. And I think our new allies might be interested in learning about all the possibilities that galactic law provides. As they continued toward their quarters, Morrison realized that humanity's transformation of galactic politics was just beginning. The treaty had been clear. when they first read it, but every time humans studied the fine print, they discovered new ways to reshape the galaxy according to their own vision of justice and cooperation. 6 months after the Defense Alliance vote, the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted in ways that no one could have predicted. The Human Defense Alliance now included 17 different species, controlled the most important trade routes in 3 galactic sectors, and operated a mobile fleet that was larger and more advanced than anything the Confederation had ever seen. Captain Rodriguez stood in the observation deck of the massive diplomatic station that humans had built at the edge of their territory. The station was officially classified as a defensive installation under Article 23 of the treaty, but it was larger than most planets and capable of faster-than-light travel. Through the enormous viewports, she could watch ships from a dozen different species docking at the facility's many ports. Captain, we have received formal requests from 8 more species wanting to join the Alliance, reported Lieutenant Dan Park, the younger brother of their former communications officer. The Confederation Council has called another emergency session for tomorrow. Rodriguez smiled as she reviewed the requests on her tablet. The species wanting to join included some significant powers, not just the smaller worlds that had initially sought human protection. What are the Confederation's complaints this time? The Vorthic Empire is claiming that we are creating an illegal hegemony that violates the spirit of galactic cooperation. They want the Court of Arbitration to review our entire alliance structure and declare it invalid. Let them complain. Dr. Barnes has been preparing for this challenge for months. The door to the observation deck opened, and Ambassador Morrison entered carrying a cup of coffee and a thick folder of documents. His promotion to full ambassador had been inevitable after the success of the territorial negotiations, and he had adapted well to his new role as humanity's primary representative to the galaxy. Good morning, Captain. I assume you have heard about the Vorthic complaint? Yes, sir. Are you concerned about the legal challenge? Morrison laughed and sat down in one of the comfortable chairs that faced the viewport. Not at all. The Vorthic are making the same mistake that everyone else has made. They are assuming that humans think like other species. Rodriguez joined him at the window, watching a massive cargo ship from the peaceful Deltari Republic dock at one of the station's commercial ports. The Deltari had been among the first species to join the Human Alliance, and their trade relationships had proven extremely profitable for everyone involved. Sir, I have been wondering about something, Rodriguez said. When we first signed the original treaty, did you expect any of this to happen? Morrison considered the question while watching the bustling activity outside. I knew that humans were good at finding opportunities where others saw only limitations. But I had no idea how many opportunities were hidden in those ancient treaties. The other founding species are not going to accept this peacefully. The Vorthic have been making threats, and the Netherians are clearly planning some kind of political response. Then they should have written better treaties, Morrison replied calmly. Lieutenant Park approached them with a communication device. Ambassador, Dr. Barnes is calling from the research facility. He says he has found something important that you need to hear immediately. Morrison activated the device, and Dr. Barnes appeared as a holographic projection. The linguist and legal expert looked excited and slightly tired, which usually meant he had discovered something significant. Ambassador, you are going to love this discovery. I have been reviewing the original Confederation Charter, the foundational document that established the galactic government 3,000 years ago. What did you find, Kevin? Remember how the founding species have always claimed that the Charter gives them permanent authority over galactic affairs? How they use that authority to justify their control over treaty negotiations and policy decisions? Yes, that has been their position since the beginning. Barnes grinned broadly. Well, it turns out that their interpretation is based on another translation error. The original charter text does not guarantee permanent authority to the founding species. Rodriguez leaned forward with interest. What does it actually say? The original text establishes founding species authority until such time as member species achieve political and military maturity sufficient for autonomous governance. The founding species have been claiming permanent control based on a mistranslation that has been accepted for 3 millennia. Morrison set down his coffee cup and stared at the holographic image. Kevin, are you telling me that the founding species have been exceeding their legal authority for 3,000 years? That is exactly what I am telling you. And here is the interesting part. 17 species with their own successful defense alliance, advanced technology, and peaceful cooperative government might very well qualify as politically and militarily mature. The implications hit Rodriguez immediately. If the founding species do not have permanent authority, then the current structure of the Confederation government might be illegal. More than that, Barnes continued, Article 216 of the Charter provides a mechanism for mature member species to assume governmental authority if they can demonstrate superior organizational capabilities. Morrison stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the ships and stations that represented humanity's growing influence in the galaxy. What would that mean practically? It means that the human alliance could potentially challenge the Confederation's authority and propose an alternative governmental structure. We would need to prove that our system provides better security, more equitable trade relationships, and greater protection for member species rights. Rodriguez pulled up statistical displays on her tablet. We can definitely prove better security. Alliance members have experienced 0 pirate attacks, 0 territorial disputes, and 0 trade disruptions since joining our defense network. Our trade relationships are more equitable too, Morrison added. Alliance members get preferential access to human technology and markets, while the Confederation system favors the founding species in almost every economic arrangement. Barnes nodded enthusiastically. I have been working with our economists to document all of these advantages. If we present this information properly, we could make a very strong case that the alliance represents a more mature and effective form of galactic governance. Lieutenant Park had been listening to the conversation with growing amazement. Sir, are you talking about replacing the Confederation government entirely? Not replacing, Morrison corrected. Evolving. The Charter provides legal mechanisms for governmental transition when member species demonstrate superior capabilities. We would simply be following the law. Rodriguez studied the data on her tablet more carefully. How many species would we need to support such a challenge? According to the Charter, we need a simple majority of member species to vote for governmental transition. Currently, that means 24 species out of 47. We have 17 in our alliance already, and 8 more have requested membership. That gets us to 25. Morrison turned back to face them with a serious expression. This is not a decision we can make lightly. Challenging the Confederation's authority would fundamentally change galactic politics forever. Sir, Rodriguez said quietly, the Confederation system has kept smaller species in subordinate positions for 3,000 years. They enforce treaties that benefit the founding species while limiting everyone else's opportunities for growth and prosperity. The alliance system is already proving that cooperation works better than dominance, Barnes added. Our member species are more prosperous, more secure, and happier than they have ever been under Confederation rule. Morrison walked back to his chair and sat down heavily. If we do this, there is no going back. The founding species will never forgive us for exposing their illegal authority grab. They can be upset all they want, Rodriguez replied. But if we follow the legal procedures outlined in their own charter, there is nothing they can do to stop us, except go to war, Lieutenant Park pointed out, which would prove that they never really believed in the peaceful cooperation they claim to represent, Morrison said. And our defense capabilities are already superior to theirs. Barnes leaned forward in his holographic projection. Ambassador, I think we need to schedule a meeting with our alliance partners. This decision affects all of us, and everyone should have a voice in determining our future. Morrison nodded slowly. Schedule the meeting, Kevin, but keep the agenda confidential until we can brief our allies in person. This information is too sensitive to risk interception. As the communication ended, the three humans sat in silence for several minutes, watching the peaceful activity outside their station. They had started with a simple treaty that seemed to limit humanity to 50 star systems. Now they were contemplating a complete transformation of galactic government. A treaty was clear when we first read it, Rodriguez said finally. Until humans read it more carefully, Morrison replied, and found opportunities that no one else had ever imagined. 2 years had passed since humanity first signed the Galactic Confederation Treaty, and the galaxy would never be the same again. What had begun as careful legal interpretation had evolved into a complete transformation of interstellar politics. The human alliance now included 28 species, controlled nearly half of all galactic trade routes, and operated the most advanced fleet in known space. Ambassador Morrison stood in his office aboard Harmony Station, humanity's newest diplomatic facility. The station was technically another mobile defense platform, but it was larger than some moons and served as the unofficial capital of the human alliance. Through the massive viewport, he could watch ships from dozens of different species conducting peaceful trade and cooperation under human protection. The view still amazed him sometimes. Sleek Deltari cargo vessels docked alongside massive Cretan exploration ships. Crystalline Netherian research platforms shared space with the flowing organic vessels of the recently joined Symphonic Collective. It was a sight that would have been impossible under the old Confederation system, where species rarely cooperated across factional lines. Sir, Captain Rodriguez entered with a data tablet and a concerned expression. We have received the formal response from the Confederation. Council regarding our governmental transition proposal. Morrison accepted the tablet and read through the document quickly. As expected, the Confederation leadership had rejected humanity's legal challenge, claiming that the Alliance's interpretation of the Charter was incorrect and potentially dangerous to galactic stability. They are demanding that we dissolve the Alliance and return to compliance with original treaty limitations, Rodriguez continued. They have given us 30 days to respond. Morrison laughed and set the tablet aside. 30 days to abandon the most successful cooperative government in galactic history and return to a system that kept most species in perpetual subordination. I think we can do better than that. The door chimed softly, and Dr. Barnes entered, carrying his usual collection of documents and looking excited about something. His work over the past 2 years had transformed him from a simple linguist into the galaxy's foremost expert on interstellar law and governmental structures. Ambassador, I have excellent news. The final vote results just came in from the Harmonic Convergence. The Harmonic Convergence was what the Alliance called their democratic decision-making process. Unlike the Confederation system, where founding species held permanent authority, every Alliance member had an equal vote on major decisions, regardless of their size or military strength. What was the final count, Kevin? 31 species in favor of formal governmental transition, 0 opposed, and 3 abstentions. We have more than enough support to invoke Article 216 of the Charter. Rodriguez smiled broadly. 31 species. That is nearly 2/3 of all galactic governments. More importantly, Barnes added, it includes some of the most advanced and influential civilizations in the galaxy. The Ancient Collective, the Symphonic Union, even 2 of the original founding species have voted to support our new system. Morrison walked to the viewport and looked out at the bustling activity around the station. Which founding species voted with us? The Ethereal Assembly and the Prismatic Commonwealth. Both issued statements explaining that they believe the alliance system better represents the cooperative ideals that the Confederation was supposed to embody. That leaves the Vorthic Empire, the Zephyrian Republic, and the Netherian Crystals as the primary opposition. Rodriguez checked her tablet. The Vorthic have been making increasingly aggressive statements about defending Confederation authority. Our intelligence suggests they are mobilizing their fleet. Let them mobilize, Morrison replied calmly. Our defensive capabilities are more than adequate to handle any threats, and military aggression would only prove that they never really believed in peaceful cooperation. Barnes activated a holographic display showing the current political situation. The beautiful thing about our legal position is that everything we are doing is completely authorized by the Confederation's own charter. If they try to use force to maintain illegal authority, they become the treaty violators. What is our timeline for implementing the transition? According to Article 216, we have 60 days to establish the new governmental structure and transfer authority from the old system. I have been working with representatives from all alliance members to design a system that addresses everyone's needs and concerns. Rodriguez looked at the display showing proposed governmental structures. How will the new system work? Democratic representation based on population and contribution rather than founding status, Barnes explained. Every species gets a base level of representation, with additional votes allocated based on population size, economic contribution, and military support for collective defense. That sounds fair, but complicated. Actually, it is simpler than the current system where different species have different rights and obligations based on arbitrary historical factors. Under our system, everyone knows exactly where they stand and what is expected of them. Morrison turned back to face them. What about the species that choose not to join the alliance? We cannot force them to participate in our system. We do not need to, Barnes replied. Article 87 of the Charter allows for autonomous regions within the larger governmental structure. Species that prefer the old system can maintain their current arrangements as long as they do not interfere with alliance operations. So the Vorthic and their allies can keep their traditional hierarchies if they want? Exactly. We are not trying to conquer anyone or force our system on unwilling participants. We are simply offering a better alternative and letting species choose for themselves. The communication system chimed, indicating an incoming priority message. Morrison activated the display, and the image of Elder Kree Vash appeared. The ancient representative of the collective looked pleased despite his species' normally stoic demeanor. Ambassador Morrison, I am calling to inform you that the Collective Council has voted to formally recognize the Alliance government as the legitimate authority for interstellar affairs. We will begin transitioning our diplomatic relationships accordingly. Thank you, Elder. Your support means a great deal to all Alliance members. The Collective has observed governmental transitions before, Ambassador. Your species has managed this transformation with remarkable skill and wisdom. We look forward to working with the new system. As the communication ended, Morrison realized that they had reached a point of no return. The old Confederation system was effectively finished, replaced by something that better reflected the needs and values of modern galactic civilization. Sir, Rodriguez said quietly, when we first signed that treaty, did you ever imagine we would end up here? Morrison considered the question while watching a group of young beings from different species working together on what appeared to be a joint research project. I knew humans were good at finding opportunities where others saw only limitations, but I never imagined that our talent for reading between the lines would reshape an entire galaxy. The Confederation leaders probably thought they were being generous by offering us 50 star systems. Barnes laughed. They thought they were containing a potential threat by limiting us to what they considered a small territory. Instead, they gave us the legal framework to build something better than anything they had ever created. The treaty was clear when they wrote it, Rodriguez observed. Until humans read it, Morrison finished, and discovered that careful attention to detail could transform the entire galaxy. Through the viewport, the stars shone down on a galaxy that was fundamentally different than it had been just 2 years before. The old system of dominance and hierarchy was giving way to cooperation and mutual benefit. Species that had been marginalized for millennia were now equal partners in galactic governance. Trade flourished, conflicts had virtually disappeared, and scientific advancement was accelerating as different civilizations shared their knowledge freely. It had all started with a treaty that seemed designed to limit human expansion. But humans had done what they always did when faced with limitations. They had read the fine print, found the loopholes, and used them to create something better than anyone had thought possible. The galaxy was learning that when humans were involved, no treaty was ever quite as clear as it first appeared.